All right, welcome to Stronger Weekly. Thanks for being here. I'm your host, Jesse Karajat. Again, appreciate you being here. We've got some great stuff to cover this week in terms of health and fitness headlines. We'll dive into that in just a bit. Our feature of the week is actually from our vault. It's one of my favorite episodes I've ever recorded. It's with Eric Hinman, who's a massive fitness entrepreneur and influencer. I know we don't like that word, but he's also got a really cool story around his alcohol journey, a before and after, if you will, and just an interesting perspective on it and how freeing from it can be such a massive impact in our life in terms of fitness and mental health and overall happiness. And I thought because it's October and there are so many people, probably so many people that watch this show that are focused on both fitness and mental health with alcohol and addiction as a through line, I thought it'd be great to really lean into that topic over the next 2 weeks to help people, not only if they're doing Sober October, but just in general, right? Kind of unlock their very best life. So that'll be on the back half of the episode. As always, we'll kick it off with the health and fitness headlines and then transition into my interview with Eric Hinman. But before I do that, I felt kind of convicted or compelled just to kick us off with just a thought, something I've been thinking about. I'm sure we're all thinking about. It's just the temperature or the climate of our country right now, assuming you're listening to this from the US. I mean, there's just been so much going on. It feels like there has been a lot going on in our country, as far as I can feel until back to when COVID started. But really the polarization of our politics and the temperature is just so raised right now. It just feels so divisive, more than I can remember in my soon to be 41 years. And somewhat for good reason, right? You have a government shutdown going on right now as I'm recording this. I'm recording this on October 10th. You have political violence. You have general violence, whether that's, school shootings like happened at the Catholic school in Minnesota, here Evergreen in Colorado, there was a high school shooting. And then you have these kind of random acts of violence that happen. You have shootings on federal ICE agents. And because of our awareness of these events, it creates this perspective that we're in a bad place as a country, right? And just some thoughts on that. When you think about our country, it is and has always been designed to encourage us to be active citizens and participants locally, to be engaged locally. And that's in our neighborhoods, our townships, our counties, and yes, to some degree, our state. Our Constitution is set up, and each state is set up to encourage that participation and awareness and passion around where we live and who we do life with. Yet, because of mass media, and that was typically broadcast media, TV, and then the invention of the internet, and then layer on top of that social media, and then this just insane connectivity that we have now because of technology. We're aware of what's happening, not just in our states, but in our country, certainly, and internationally, as we engage with and have conflict with other countries and other continents. And because of our awareness of what's happening, because of our propensity to consume information, particularly news, and also be targeted by these companies like Instagram, like TikTok, which, I mean, if you're on TikTok, as a quick aside, just get off of that thing. But because we're targeted with information and the more we consume it, the algorithm taps into our curiosities, and then the intensity of that information amplifies and we receive more of it, more of it, more of it. We have this perception that we're all doomed and we're all in trouble, right? And I guess my thought or my encouragement really is just get off, disconnect, get away from it. Don't consume the information, because I was reflecting on my own life. And, I listen to the news and I try my best to get my news from both sides of the aisle. And yet still, the more I consume, especially now, the heavier I feel and the worse I feel. And the more I feel myself being pulled towards this baseline of almost despair or worry or anxiety. And I'm not saying necessarily that ignorance is bliss, because it's good to be informed as an American around what America is doing and what's happening, especially around policy and in some cases, international affairs. But it doesn't help me, for me to walk around with these facts or these feelings in my head does not help me in my day to day when I'm waking up and spending time with my children and my wife, or when I'm engaging with employees and working towards a mission of my job, right? So why do I consume it? And I think it's particularly important because what we consume and how we feel about what's happening in our country can and will impact how we do interact with people in our lives, our neighbors, our friends, our family members. And even in my own life, I've become aware of instances where I've seen relationships fractured because of passions around political views. And it's unacceptable. It's absolutely unacceptable. So my encouragement again is just disconnect and return to the origins of what our country is supposed to be about. Engage locally. If you're out spending 30 minutes reading an article about Israel and Gaza, when there's things happening in your own community that you don't even know about or care about, what is the point? Why are you doing that? I think you should ask yourself that question, because our country, patriotism is being involved locally, and it together, if we all have that approach, it would roll up to a healthier, more stable country. But for some reason, we do the reverse. We focus all of our attention and our passion around these issues that, for the most part, don't impact us locally. If you spend all your time consuming, and then with your actions and words, do nothing to better your country, you are not a patriot, okay? Look around you. How many people need help, right, in your town that you could be proactive and engage with, right? Are you donating money to local organizations that help the needy, that help people experiencing housing problems, help people addicted? What are you actually doing where you live to make a difference? Because if you're not doing anything, but what you are doing is going online and watching videos and consuming social media and just posting hate and negativity and anger on there, and that's your contribution to America, you're not a patriot. You are just not. You're not doing anything. You're just adding to this polarized political climate, and you're not helping anything. So question that, question your social media consumption, question where you're getting your news, pull it back in. And if you're truly a patriot, get active locally and help somebody with your time or with your giving, and try to stay positive, because none of this whole social media explosion, everything that's happening, none of this is making our country better. And it's certainly not making you better as a person. So that's my thought of the week. And with that, as we normally do, we'll go into our health and fitness headlines of the week. Let's go. All right, your first health and fitness headline of the week. Big news in the growing push to regulate social media. Let's go. I'm all for it. So New York City has filed a 327-page lawsuit against Meta, TikTok, YouTube, and Snapchat. Interestingly, I wouldn't consider YouTube social media, but accusing them all of, quote, intentionally designing their platforms to be addictive to children. And this is coming from Reuters. The suit claims the company's algorithms exploit kids' attention spans and are driving anxiety, depression, and classroom decline. Mayor Eric Adams said, quote, we're standing up for our kids and taking on the companies that have profited from their pain. Corporate counsel Sylvia Hinz-Radix added, quote, these platforms are the tobacco companies of the 21st century. Love that. Meta responded that the claims are, quote, unfounded, pointing to new parental control tools, while Google said YouTube is, quote, not designed for under 13 users. I don't know how that's relevant. Nationally, the CDC reports 42% of high school students feel persistently sad or hopeless, up 60% in a decade. We got to be paying attention to this, folks. At least 41 states and 2,000 school districts have now filed similar suits against these platforms. So we can definitely expect mounting legal pressure on big tech and potential federal standards limiting how social media apps engage minors. I love seeing people going after these companies. Some of their practices are predatory and disgusting. And if you're a parent and you have a kid, please, if you haven't already, step in, moderate their consumption, keep an eye on it, and block them from, listening and watching to things that can hurt their mental health. Next up, warnings and risks around the use of GLP-1 medication. So doctors are warning that popular GLP-1 medications such as Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro could interfere with imaging, particularly around cancer screenings. A Pfizer oncology advisor noted that, quote, misread scans delay correct diagnoses and create unnecessary anxiety. So manufacturers, including Novo Nordisk, said they're reviewing the data, but emphasized patients should not stop the medication without physician guidance. So other known side effects of GLP-1s have included digestive stress, gallbladder issues, and hair loss. So takeaway for you, if you are on any of these medications, always be very thorough in your pre-appointment screening with the healthcare professionals. Make sure that anyone working with you and helping you from a medical perspective knows about the use of these drugs so that if you do have to have imaging, we can make sure that it's accurate and you get the appropriate care that you need. But with anything that's kind of taking off fast, if you're taking GLP-1s, especially if you're not doing it under the guidance of a medical professional, please proceed with caution. Next up, a big study around the prevalence of depression for men and women. So a global study led by the University of Edinburgh and University of Queensland showed that women carry twice as many genetic variants linked to depression as men. And this reporting is coming from The Guardian. So analyzing more than 1 million genomes, scientists identified 145 gene sites associated with mood disorders. Lead author, Professor Andrew McIntosh said, quote, our results suggest women's genetic architecture confers a much higher baseline risk, and hormones and stress may amplify it, end quote. Co-author Dr. Rosie Walker added, quote, this helps explain why depression is nearly twice as common in women, particularly after puberty. So the CDC reports depression diagnosis amongst U.S. adults has risen nearly 60% in 10 years, with women affected at almost double the rate of men. So, takeaway, awareness, early screening can make a big difference, especially if you're a woman and especially with family history. And there are lifestyle tools and tips you can adopt if you are experiencing depression or if you want to prevent that from happening. So things like consistent exercise, sleep, absolutely therapy can help with that. But I think personally it's kind of shocking that women are more likely to become depressed, and it's by twice as much statistically speaking. So your next health and fitness headline, this one's for the diet soda drinkers if you're still out there. So a new European cohort study is raising doubts about the safety of artificially sweetened beverages. And this is coming from Fox News by way of the European Journal of Public Health. So following 200,000 adults over the course of a decade, that's a long time, researchers found heavy diet drink consumers had higher risks of cardiovascular disease and premature death than non-drinkers of diet drinks or anything with artificial sweeteners. So lead investigator Dr. Charlotte Debras said, quote, people often assume switching to diet drinks is harmless, but our data suggests moderation is key. The American Beverage Association countered, why wouldn't they? Quote, low and no calorie sweeteners are safe and help reduce sugar intake. Observational studies cannot prove causation. So the evidence keeps stacking up. Diet sodas may not be the free pass we hoped. Water, coffee, unsweetened tea remain the healthiest everyday choices. So you turn to diet, whatever, because you're trying to maybe watch your waistline and lose some pounds. And while it may work in the short term, what this study is finding that long term, you could be putting yourself at a much higher risk for the diseases that will kill you. So if you're still drinking your Coke Zeros, your Gatorade Zeros, whatever, give that some second thought, because there's some studies coming out that you might be hurting yourself long term. And your last health and fitness headline of the week. This is a fun one. I feel good about this one, but it has to do with the link between a man's general fitness and how that fitness can transfer over for health benefits for their offspring. So, a team has recently discovered that fathers who exercise before conception may pass on greater endurance and energy efficiency to their offspring. And this is from News Medical. In lab studies, offspring of trained male mice ran 20% longer than controls. Senior author Dr. Zhen Yan explained, quote, paternal exercise remodels sperm microRNAs, enhancing mitochondrial function in their next generation. And co-author Dr. Wei Zhang added, quote, these findings highlight that a father's lifestyle can biologically prime his children for better health. So all the dudes out there that have been training for so long, who'd have thought that's going to impact your kids? So pretty awesome stuff. Human studies are underway, but previous research already shows paternal fitness influences offspring metabolism and stress resilience. So I got two takeaways here. One, if you're planning on conception, of having kiddos, your mental health and physical health very well might impact significantly the same for your kiddos. So if you're not healthy, get healthy, start training, focus on mental health and fitness and nutrition leading up to the point when you're going to conceive, because you're going to be giving your kiddos a head start. That's pretty awesome. And then the other takeaway for me, if my wife is listening, Meg, I'm not sure if you are, but you know, all that time I was investing training, see, there was a reason to it. I knew this. I was planning and preparing for this all along. So that's it for your health and fitness headlines of the week. Stay with us. We're going to have a quick word from our sponsor, and then Eric Hinman will rejoin the podcast, sort of, with one of our greatest hits from the vault. See you on the other side. Look, 1 in 10 Americans today struggle with alcohol use disorder, and I was one of them. Did you know that there is a safe, science-backed daily pill that you can take to drink less or even quit alcohol for good? It's called naltrexone, a doctor-prescribed medication that you get online, and our sponsor, Or Health, is the nation's leading provider of naltrexone. To date, Or Health has helped over 35,000 people find freedom from alcohol, and I'm proudly one of them. To get started, text STRENGTH to 710-710. Again, that's STRENGTH to 710-710, and get started on your journey to finally find freedom from alcohol. I am sitting here with the powerful Eric Hinman. What's up, Eric?
What's up, Jesse? How you doing today?
I'm going to start off with reading you a quote that you said, and then just kind of ask you to respond to it, and we'll go from there. And that quote is, and you'll notice it right away, it's on your website. So, at 26, my career dictated my life. I worked set hours and I dressed the part. My schedule was dictated by others, and I didn't really exercise. I chased money, traded my time for it, and cared deeply about the public perception of success. I also, and I'm almost finished, resorted to excessively drinking alcohol to achieve a state change, in quotes. I thought this was the way to meet people, to be vulnerable, and to have fun. Eric, I think so many people can relate with that, myself included. But not so many people make the necessary changes in their life to move away from that mindset or that way of living. Why did you?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting that so many of us in our late teens and early 20s in high school and then on to college, that's just what fun is. At least it was for me, and I think many others. I didn't go to a school where the mountains were present, like Boulder, Colorado, or, having an ocean. But even in those places, I feel like partying is a huge part of fun and a huge part of meeting people, socializing, and status. So, yeah, I mean, I fell victim to that. I wanted to be in the party crowd in college because I thought that was what you did, and that's how you met people, and that's how you were perceived to be cool. If you were going out and partying every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night, if you were ruling the beer pong table, if you could do more shots than the person next to you, I thought all of that was the status game, and I wanted to be the king of partying. So that's how I spent much of my late teens and up until about 26 or 27 years old, until I found myself in a place where I didn't have great energy. I uh, realized that I was just chasing this public perception of success, trying to make more money, which honestly was just stressing me out more and more, as opposed to making me happier because I had, hundreds and hundreds of insurance clients that I was answering to, and I was glued to my BlackBerry at the time. Um, and yeah, I had no free time. I was living life on other people's terms. So when I hired a personal trainer in my late 20s and started my wellness journey, I realized that was so much more fulfilling than how I was previously living my life. And that hitting a hard workout, I felt so good after it. And
Mm.
progressing in running, progressing in triathlon, joining a triathlon club, doing my first triathlon, doing my first half marathon, all of these things, I felt so much more fulfilled than making more money and falling victim again to the public perception of success and trying to show that I was successful in society's eyes. So yeah, the from 29 to 34, I drastically changed my life. I changed my daily behaviors and activities. My friend group changed. What I enjoyed, what I craved, what I chased, what made me fulfilled, all of that changed. And, as I sit here now today, or stand here at my standing desk here today at 43 years old and just outside of Denver, Colorado, my life is filled with things that ultimately my head hits the pillow at night and I'm like, that was a fucking great day. And that's how I want every single day to be. I'm living life on my terms. My day is very much based around wellness activities. I'm interacting with the people that I want to interact with. I'm doing business with people I want friendships with. I have easy access to nature, mountain biking, trail running, getting outside, getting sunlight. And we host people all the time at our house doing contrast therapy, getting in the sauna, getting in an ice barrel. And I love leaving others with these memorable experiences. So, yeah, that's how I live my life today. And it's massively different than how I lived my life in my 20s.
Your transformation, a lot of people start there and then maybe they'll just incorporate fitness and kind of drag some habits along with them. They certainly don't become a five-time Ironman, a basically, highest level CrossFit athlete, a high level mountain biker. What do you think it is about you that made that pivot so dramatically into the lifestyle that you're living now?
I mean, I definitely have an obsessive personality. So, I think that's why I was so committed to partying, and that's why now I'm so committed to wellness is, I'm very structured, and when I find something that I enjoy, I stick with it and I do it for a long period of time. So, that obviously was a trap in my late teens and early 20s where, I was just kind of had tunnel vision of like, I'm going to party, I want to be the best partier. And, now these last 15 years, I've really had tunnel vision around progressing in health and wellness and inspiring others to adopt some of these behaviors that have benefited me so much. And I mean, looking back to when I was in my 20s, the two big things that allowed me to radically transform my life were, committing to something else, which that was that personal trainer. I needed his knowledge, his motivation, the structure, I was paying him, so I had to show up. And also, I I stuck with it long enough to find flow state within it. I feel like most of us, we fall off the track because we don't give things long enough to really drop into it. And my kind of rule of thumb is it takes about 15 minutes to drop into anything you're doing, and it takes around 3 to 5 months to make something habitual. So for me, like I was committing to 45-minute personal training sessions, and the first 15 minutes often sucked, but after 15 minutes, I could kind of drop into the moment. And I did it for long enough that it became a habit. No longer did I need the discipline and motivation to do it. It was just like, this is what I do every
Yeah.
single day at 6 a.m. I go, I see a personal trainer, I get my ass kicked, and it's making me better. And I mean, that led to so many other positive behaviors. Ultimately it led to joining a triathlon club, running again, buying a bike, signing up for my first triathlon, signing up for my first Olympic distance triathlon, signing up for my first half Ironman, signing up and completing my first full Ironman. And, through that time period, again, I was tinkering with sleep protocols. I was tinkering with diet. I was tinkering with supplementation. I was tinkering with recovery. So, again, looking back, like it was just one change that I made. And then
Yeah.
all of these other things compounded on top of it. And, I replaced one thing with another. I think that's super important. For me, going out was about, meeting girls and meeting friends and having status. And I replaced that with exercise, where I found a whole different friend group through this triathlon club and through competing in triathlon and then through joining a CrossFit gym. So I think it's important that, if you're looking to say quit a bad addiction, find another thing that you can throw yourself into that replaces that addiction. And that's what I did.
When you decided to move towards training and then triathlons, ultra triathlons, the whole deal, what was your relationship with alcohol like? Did you just kind of cut cold turkey, or did you gradually move it out? What did that look like?
Yeah, it was a gradual shift. I mean, I got to a pretty bad place with alcohol in my mid-20s. I mean, I was partying every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night, not remembering most of those nights. And then, I was the guy showing up to Thanksgiving, with my family, super hungover and not present and just wanting to sleep the entire time. So, I was starting to get to a place where I just didn't feel good. I didn't feel like a good person. I didn't feel like I was showing up for those that I cared about as the best version of myself. So
Hmm.
with triathlon, it was a progression from, let's say I had triathlon club on a Saturday or a Sunday. Like I wasn't going to go out on those nights because I didn't want to throw up when I was out on the run after the bike. Um, but over like a 2-year period, when I went from doing my first triathlon to doing my first half Ironman and my first full Ironman, like at that point, I pretty much had gone cold turkey. But it was a gradual shift. It went from, getting blackout drunk on the weekends to, having a few beers and a few glasses of wine at dinner most Fridays and Saturday nights to maybe once a week, then once a month, and then not even thinking about it because I wasn't really staying out late anymore because I had to get up at 5 in the morning to hit my first workout of three, and
Well,
sleep became so important to me that I didn't want to sacrifice my sleep. I mean, also during those years, I wasn't traveling a lot. I mean, I was very, very structured. So it really just came down to it didn't serve the purpose of me wanting to get to the Ironman World Championships in Kona. I was much more focused on the training, the recovery, the sleep, and yeah, alcohol just went by the wayside. And with that, like you said, a lot of my friends also um my friend group changed. My friends all of a sudden became the people I was training with, and their behaviors were radically different than my party friends. So I didn't have those same decisions where people were asking me to go out late at night or to go to a late night dinner to have a bottle of wine. People were asking me instead to go for a long bike ride on a Saturday morning and to go for a long run and to hit a triathlon club and to hit a CrossFit workout. So yeah, the people around you matter so much in what your reality is going to be. And then like your environment too, like moving here to Colorado, it generally attracts people who want to be outside recreating. So, the majority of my friends here do that. So very rarely does anyone ever ask me to go to any kind of late night endeavor.
one of the things you've talked about, Eric, and I'll throw the word out there so you can start wrapping your head around it, is dopamine.
Mhm.
And I've read some articles that you've written about how essentially, these are my words, not yours, when the dopamine is free and cheap and floods your system, it's going to have negative consequence. Whereas when it's earned through hard work and other things, it's going to have positive impact. Now, again, those are my words, but can you say a little bit more about that?
100%. So, we can all get a hit of dopamine from drugs, from alcohol, but there's consequences that come with it. So now I look at any of these dopamine hits that I want to get as, how can I get it with no consequences? So jumping in a cold body of water, getting in a sauna, doing a hard workout, going for a run, going for a hike in nature, having flow state conversations with like-minded people, being in an environment where you don't want to be anywhere else. Like all of these provide a dopamine hit with no consequences. So that's how I want to live my life. Like I like being in flow state. I like feeling energized. I like that feeling of, being high on life, but I've found all of these ways to do it naturally and with no consequences. So I think those are important things to consider because it's much more sustainable when you're doing it with no consequences than it is when you're doing it with consequences.
Look, life can be hard and stressful sometimes. We all know that. But when it comes to supplements, why is it that nobody talks about stress and resilience? For me, I take the adaptogen stack from Momentous Supplements. It's a daily blend of ashwagandha, rhodiola, and L-theanine, all clinically backed to help you stay calm, focused, and resilient. I'm proudly partnered with Momentous Supplements because they are the industry's best. They don't cut corners. Everything's third-party tested, used by pro athletes, and high quality. Head to livemomentous.com and use code STRENGTH for 35% off your first order. Again, that's livemomentous.com, code word STRENGTH for 35% off your first order, and get started today. This is where I'm going to geek out a little bit on the fitness side of things because there's so many options that people could choose if they want to just be fit, right? Whatever that means to them. But like, let's just say build muscle, be healthy. And I don't even throw this last one in: longevity, live longer, healthier lives, be around for our loved ones. Why, when if you just look at like a meat and potatoes bro split hypertrophy type training program versus say CrossFit versus a very buzzword right now, but hybrid, where it's a mix, Nick Bare kind of puts it on that, but it's a mix of hypertrophy training with running, but not extreme lengths. All that said, you're a smart guy, you're well-informed, you've tried everything. Why do you personally choose CrossFit? And then since you've tried, running and ultra marathons, all those things, why do you personally prefer mountain biking? Those two.
Yeah, great questions. And to answer your previous question, I train 2 to 3 hours a day most days. One day out of the week or 2 days out of the week, I'll stay out of the gym, but I'll still bike on those days. The reason why I've chosen those specific things is because I feel the best in doing them. And I think the reason why I feel the best doing them is because it's a mix of strength, aerobic capacity, anaerobic capacity, skill, risk, being outside. All of those things contribute to them being my favorite activities. And like you said, I've tried it all. I've, swam, I've run on the road, I've trained for triathlon, I've trained for high rocks. And I just find that CrossFit and mountain biking, they yield the most flow state during and after. And I just feel my best in those. And both of them, I continue to improve in them. Like I got to a place in triathlon where I wasn't really improving anymore. I was training 25 hours a week just to, stay at the top level amateur. And I wasn't willing to make the other sacrifices to become a pro, which was basically losing more muscle mass and swimming more. I started to feel pretty lethargic towards the end of my Ironman training years because my cortisol was so high from all of the endurance training. With CrossFit, I feel better because, I have the strength component and I have the anaerobic component where, I'm pushing myself in these high intensity interval workouts. Then obviously with CrossFit, you're lifting pretty heavy weight, but also the skill aspect to it, that and mountain biking. These aren't things that you can just do at a high level. You have to practice the movement patterns, the Olympic lifting. You have to practice gymnastics. And with mountain biking, I'm still progressing. I'm still getting better on my bike. It's not just checking out on the road and, moving your legs up and down. Like there's a massive skill component to it. So those are two other things I really enjoy about both of them. And with mountain biking, I'm outside. Like I love exercising outside. So, I check that box of one of my tiny wins of getting outside every single day for at least 60 minutes.
I have one more kind of specific question around CrossFit, right? So I don't personally do CrossFit and I don't do Olympic lifts, right? So snatches and cleans and all those things. In your opinion, like, do you think somebody can feel confident that they have a good, reliable fitness program without doing Olympic type lifting? Or do you think that that's a necessary component that all fitness programs should include?
I don't think it's necessary at all. I mean, I think if you're doing complex lifts, back squats, front squats, deadlifts, pressing movements, overhead pressing movements, core work, anaerobic conditioning, aerobic conditioning, you're good. You don't need to do Olympic lifts. You don't need to use a barbell. You don't need to use a kettlebell. You don't need to use a dumbbell. Like, pick something. And the best
Love it.
thing is stay consistent with whatever it is you pick. It could be, body weight type movements that'll give you benefit with strength. It could be body weight movements like burpee box jump overs that spike your heart rate, or sprints. It doesn't have to be on an assault bike or, a skill-based CrossFit Metcon. For mobility, you can
Right.
do yoga, you can stretch. There's so many ways to be fit. So, I wouldn't say any one way is the best way. The best way is something that you're going to do consistently. And I do think that, lifting moderately heavy weights, doing complex movements, and then, getting your heart rate high and also sustaining your heart rate in that 130 to 150 aerobic heart rate zone for, 30 to 45 minutes of time, doing a mix of all of that is going to allow you to be, an incredible father, an incredible business owner, an incredible friend, an incredible just person. You'll feel good day in and day out. You'll be energized. And I think that the mix of those things is going to lead to, the longest health span and lifespan.
Love it. Love it. And I'm so sorry. I can't even help myself. I'm throwing another fitness question at you. What say you to the person that is a big proponent of, say, heavy deadlift, heavy barbell bench press, heavy back squat? As long as you have those three, it doesn't matter outside of that, but you got to those three. I think I know your answer, but do you think there is some kind of like key lifts that people should be focusing on, or what you just said? If it works for you and it's consistent, keep doing it.
I mean, I'll answer personally for me. Yes. I mean, I feel best when I have some muscle mass, and I have gained my muscle mass from lifting moderately heavy weights, doing complex lifts. I very rarely do any kind of hypertrophy work. I don't do machines. My typical schedule is back squats and front squats at least once a week. Olympic lifts generally once or twice a week, deadlifts at least once a week, and some kind of pressing movement at least once a week, overhead press or bench press, oftentimes both of those in a given week. And I like using the barbell just because I um, I enjoy the barbell. You could do the same thing with kettlebells. You could do the same thing with dumbbells. The barbell is nice because it's sitting on a rack, and like with heavy dumbbells, you'd have to clean them up to do some of this stuff. So I feel like the barbell just lends itself well to doing heavier weights with these lifts. But I mean, there's plenty of people out there. I mean, I've read, I think it's Herschel Walker, he just does body weight stuff. He does push-ups and air squats. So, you can do hypertrophy stuff. I think the key is like, you need to do enough that you're tearing some muscle so that it grows back stronger. So, if you're doing lower weight, then making sure that you're doing enough reps to tear some muscle. Like, it should be hard. The moderately heavy weights I'm doing towards the end of those reps, I'm not going to failure, but within 2, 3, 4 reps, I would be at failure. So I'm sweating, I'm exerting myself. And same with the anaerobic conditioning, it's getting your heart rate high enough that you're getting the benefits of getting your heart rate high enough. Generally for most, a walk probably isn't going to do it. You're going to have to do some kind of sprint or a complex movement that's really going to drive your heart rate up. So I think exertion is a big component of this, whether or not, the routine you're doing is going to work for you or not.
Let's move towards, if you could, man, your perfect day, right? And that's what you call it. I think you explaining your perfect day and then also why can kind of help people start to make those decisions to move incrementally in those directions. Big diatribe to ask you, can you just walk us through your perfect day and just make little pivots and explain why it is you choose to do those things and how it benefits you?
For sure. Yeah. And I'll start by saying, I mean, I can kind of prioritize what worked best for me. I feel like the most common question I get is what supplements you take. And I feel like supplements are the icing on the cake. Like, for the things where you're going to get the most benefit, they're probably going to be the hardest to do, like exercise, hard workouts, lifting
Right.
heavy weight, anaerobic conditioning, aerobic conditioning, doing triathlons. So for me, I mean, the top of the food pyramid is dialing in exercise. That's not something I'm ever going to miss. If I'm traveling, I book a flight, later in the morning so that I can get my morning exercise in. The number two thing that I massively prioritize is sleep, getting at least 8 hours of sleep. We don't have kids, so, obviously if you have kids, then that's going to fall by the wayside at certain times in your life. But, I religiously get to bed around the same time each day, and I wake up for around the same time each day with no alarm. So sleep is number two for me. Diet is number three. Dialing in a dietary routine that you enjoy, but it's not rocket science. Eating single ingredient foods that you can hunt, kill, catch, or source in nature. Shopping the perimeter of a grocery store instead of the processed foods. And then, recovery I would put next, some kind of recovery routine, whether it's just going for a walk each day to improve blood flow, or, like what we have, the sauna and ice barrel. You could even take a hot Epsom salt bath. That's an amazing recovery protocol. And then I would put supplements, at the very bottom of the list. With that said, I mean, there's some things, if they yield benefit, like nootropics or caffeine, where they'll lead to a behavior like exercise or a sleep supplement that is going to help improve your sleep. Like, yeah, I truly believe in those, but, they're leading to this behavior, that the behavior is the thing that's really making a massive change. And then, I mean, my perfect day, I'll read it for you. I have what I coin these tiny wins that I've developed over time. And most of these came during my Ironman years, when I had a lot of time alone in nature with my heart rate elevated. And I kind of consider that my 4-year psychedelic experience. Just, I started to think through like how I wanted my day designed, and, what things I was doing, what people I was around, what environments I was in, where I was completely in the moment. And then all of those things where I didn't feel aligned and I was not in the moment. I was wishing I was somewhere else. I was wishing I was with someone else. I was wishing I was doing something else. So ultimately, that 4-year period led to this list of my tiny wins. So here's mine. And, this is going to be different for everyone. Again, like lifestyles, factors are going to play into what your perfect day is. So for me, sleep at least 7 hours. Typically I get 8+. Attempt to make the perfect espresso. I love starting my morning with something, again, skill-based, where I can progress. So every morning I go down the stairs, I turn my espresso machine on, and Sarah and I kind of go back and forth of trying to make the perfect espresso for each other. There's my girlfriend. For
a little competition in your perfect day as well.
Yeah, I do like competition. Get outside for at least 60 minutes combined with exercise. Lift something heavy, preferably with others that share the same passion. Get my heart rate above 155 beats per minute. Meet one new person. I try to meet at least one new person every single day. Generally, that's in person, but it also is interacting with people on social media that eventually I often meet in person. Have several engaging conversations. A lot of times that's having a podcast with someone, being on calls with various brands that I work with. Like, I want to be able to add value and get value in the relationships I have. I think when the sum is greater than the parts, that's a great relationship. Introduce two people that will benefit from knowing each other. I love just like introducing people that I think will add value into each other's lives. Tell friends, family, and or your spouse, partner, you love them. Hug, kiss, and share your love with those closest to you. Do something kind, give with no expectations. Create something, whether it's content, a community event, just do something creative. Learn something new, read, listen to a podcast, or learn from another human. Some kind of self-care, mind, body, and or spirit. So for me, that's generally sauna and ice, but could be yoga, meditation. Eat wholesome food with positive people. We have people over here almost every single night that we do communal dinners with. Participate in something community-oriented. That's oftentimes our contrast therapy sessions, where we invite friends over every night. And then plan an adventure. I love having things that I look forward to on a daily basis, and like big things that I'm looking forward to in the future.
That's amazing. Well, man, you're an inspiration. You're a kind and generous soul. I've joked before and said this to you: when I grow up one day, I want to be Eric Hinman, man. So thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate you, Eric.
Happy to, Jesse.
Well, that's it for this week's episode. Thanks for listening to the Stronger Weekly podcast for your health news, fitness insights, and motivation. Wishing you a strong and healthy week ahead. We'll see you next time.